Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another edition of News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Petermaritzburg 105.6 FM, and audio streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaba bikum. My name is Yunus, Sacoor, and I will be in your company for the next 2 hours, 8 to 10 p.m. I'll be interviewing our guests shortly. Today, the date is the 16th of April, 2025, equivalent to 18th of Shawwal al-Mukarram, 1446 AH. We're glad to be back on News in Focus live once again for a full 2 hours. I have a very interesting program for discussion tonight, and I have some heavyweights with me in the studio from the different ratepayer associations. But before we introduce them, I'm just going to introduce our topic for this evening. But before I do so, I want to indicate that we've had a lot of torrential rainfall in the last 24 hours. And there's been a Schedule 4 warning, and also it's going into Schedule 5 because the roads are getting flooded. And there's a lot of problems with bridges throughout Tekwini. And this is no doubt indicative of the kind of condition of our infrastructure. So we're going to chat briefly about that. But the subject this evening is, are we really receiving value for money for rates and utility payments? In other words, what taxes we are paying. Number two, the revenue that government and municipalities are receiving from the public, what are they using it for, and is it being used effectively? Because that's a cause for concern from ratepayers, taxpayers, and the residents of the country. And basically the kind of infrastructure damages we're facing, not only in Tekwini but throughout the country. So we're going to do a quick analysis of these areas of concern for this evening. But before we chat on these issues, I want to do a bit of a preamble on the kind of taxes that people are paying. Firstly, you pay your normal income tax if you're above the income tax threshold. And that, depending on what income you're earning, it varies. And I think business pays in the region of about 40% plus, and high earners are around the 40% mark. Middle income earners are around between 25 and 30%. That's a normal income taxes they pay. Then we pay rates. The property owners, they pay a percentage of the value of the property in the form of rates. Tenants are not excluded because the rental they pay, there is an element of rates that the landlord imposes in order for he or her to rent out the property to make it sustainable. So tenants or residents in flatted units or wherever, they kind of paying indirectly property rates. Then we pay utilities, which is basically for electricity, water, sewer, and the like. And then the next tax is VAT, VAR, value-added tax. Now, this one, there's been a lot of discussions around it. At the moment, it's 15%, and government decided to increase it by 1%, 0.5 this year and 0.5 next year. It hasn't been imposed because there's been a lot of challenges on that VAT increases, and we know the kind of discussions that took place last week in our show. And basically, having highlighted the 4 taxes we pay, you do a quick calculation, one picks up that more than 50% of one's income is going towards the different forms of taxes. And what are we expecting in return for all these taxes? Now, in government services, they expected to provide a host of services, but in summary, these national or these government hospitals are expected to provide a medical service for people who are not on medical aid. It's questionable what kind of service our hospitals are providing. Number two, the ESCOM is part of government. They supposed to be providing electricity at an affordable rate to the municipalities, who then charge it to the people that use the electricity. We know the tariff increases that are taking place, and it's becoming unaffordable. Same with Amgeni Water. They provide water in KwaZulu-Natal, and then RAN Water and other water boards are providing water for the different provinces. And again, the costs are escalating all the time. And also there's disruption of services of electricity and water. And then SAPS, which is providing security by government, and we know the current, condition of SAPS and the corruption that's taking place and the security concerns. This is from a national perspective. And then the arterial roads, the freeways and, the roads that are maintained by government, there are serious concerns. When it comes to local government, where one pays the rates and utilities, one expects from them electricity, costs at an affordable, but it's not affordable anymore because those tariffs are going into two numbers plus. The same with water, the kind of outages that are taking place, the burst water pipes, the underground water leaks, and regular water, cuts. It's a huge problem. And then road maintenance is, we can't even talk about it given the amount of potholes that are in and around our city. And some of them call them sinkholes. And a lot of these roads haven't been maintained for a considerable period of time, so they cannot patch them up anymore. And then sewer and stormwater blockages, it's the order of the day. Now, with all these rains, we know the amount of sewer blockages and the excess water is flowing into the roads. So would all these services that one is expecting for the rates and taxes and other taxes we pay, the ratepayers are saying they're fed up, we're not getting any value for money, and where is the money going? Now, in a nutshell, from analysis of the concerns raised by ratepayers, concerned politicians, a lot of this expenditure is going into maladministration, corruption, fraud, incompetent personnel within those departments, and there's political turmoil, and to say the least. So given a background of all this, I want to play a clip because the ruling party in the last 10 days have been engaging KZN leadership, the provincial leadership under the convener Jeff Radebe and coordinator Mike Mabuyakulu and Nomse Dube held various meetings with business, with civil society, with religious leaders, starting from last week, continuing this week. Today, there was a meeting with civil society, and there were more than 50 different civic organizations present, and they raised serious concerns along the lines of what I've described now. Now, in brief, some of the business leaders, and that's where a large amount of one's taxes and rates comes out, they mentioned that there's serious concern in terms of the performance of government and municipalities, and they raise various issues around corruption, maladministration. They even question the leadership's seriousness in rooting out corruption and dealing with maladministration. Now, this afternoon, civil society met with the same leaders, and I've got some guests present here, which I'll introduce them later in the program. They attended this particular workshop. And there were some, I'll just play a clip from Brother Asad Ghaffar. He is the chairman of eThekwini Ratepayers Protest Movement. He attended this meeting, and I want you to just catch a listen of these few minutes clip that was recorded, and he actually raised these issues at that civil society, and this is to set the scene for tonight's discussion.
My name is Asad Ghaffar. I am the chairperson of the eThekwini Ratepayers Protest Movement. I also sit as the chair of the Vertical Ratepayers Association. I think many of us will know me. Thank you very much for the introduction. But for me, the bigger concern, and I want to echo the sentiments of Brady as well. And I've said this in many public platforms, and I'll say it again today. I don't have a political home. My hopes was with the African National Congress. And the fact that the African National Congress has failed this country and its people, I find myself homeless. I don't know who to turn to. So for me, I'm going to address the issues in regards to what I see. And I heard the earlier speaker saying, we must take the criticism. And I hope that you take it in the spirit that I'm going to give you. Firstly, I think as the ANC, sorry, not the ANC, as the African National Congress, you guys need to define yourself. And right now, you don't know who you are. Are you the ANC that we know, and of the ones that you spoke about this morning, meaning that we stand for every single person in this country. We are non-racial, non-partisan, and we want an inclusive society. That is the ANC that we want. Are you that ANC? And I don't think that you can answer that. We are privy to the reports that we see in the press. There is a power struggle between the president of the ANC and the deputy president. It's in the press, it's open. And on one side, you have one push for the all-inclusive ANC, and then you have the other push, which is saying R&T. And R&T is against an all-inclusive society, let's be honest. We can call it whatever you want. And the other concern that we have, if you go to any ANC-led municipality, you will find in a council meeting, they will open with the national anthem. And with that, they will also sing the Pan-African national anthem. And those are in contradiction to each other. So if you control that municipality as the African National Congress, and you should be leading that non-racial, non-whatever, all-inclusive, and you need to drive that. But even in your ANC-led municipalities, when the ceremony is being sung, they sit down and you allow it. And that act in itself is racial, but you allow it. So if you are in power and you are leading the municipality, you should say, sorry, you can't do this, not in mine. You're doing it in yours, not in mine. But we don't know who you are, because you yourself don't know who you are. And once you figure out who you are, things will work. You also spoke about ensuring that people enjoy a good life. How? When you're allowing corruption. Corruption is causing tariffs to increase to a point that people cannot afford it. But if you don't address the issue of corruption, especially in the municipalities that you control, and everyone sitting here will tell you, we've been fighting high tariffs for the last 5 years. And none of your officials are prepared to even listen to the concerns. We bring live examples. Last year, on the budget increase, we brought a live example of a person who's a cashier in a major chain store, I don't want to name the store, who earns around 5,000 to 6,000 rand. She has to pay for transport to get to work. She has to look after the elderly parents and children and siblings and whatever. There's absolutely nothing that she can afford, but she still has to pay the high tariff increase because someone sitting in the municipality thinks that by increasing an electricity tariff, that the middle class is funding this. Not thinking that there's people who actually buy prepaid electricity, ordinary citizens, who are being prejudiced by it. And if you guys don't address corruption, I am telling you now, you will not be in power in the next local government election. Like it or not like it. That's the reality. The fact that you want to engage with us and you want to listen to us is all well and good. It's up to you guys now, whether you are really prepared to change. If you're really prepared to change, come meet with us. We're happy to engage with you. Because as ratepayer associations, we've been calling for this. We want oversight. Give us that oversight. If you say that you want to end corruption, give us that oversight. We'll ensure that there is no corruption. But because you don't want to give us that oversight, corruption will continue. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that was Brother Asad Ghaffar. He just gave a bit of a preamble. We also have with us in the studio Mr. Ish Pralad. He's the president of the Tikweni Ratepayers and Residents Association. He also attended this workshop as civil society. Let's catch a listen to his 2-minute clip.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ish Pralad. I'm the president of the Tikweni Ratepayers and Residents Association, also the chair of the organization. My colleague from here have said most of it, but I am just going to polish a little of it. And I want to know, what are you going to do about the double-digit tariff increase? Are you going to stop it or are you going to look at it? Number two is how many times a year are we going to have this engagement? Once a year or once in 5 years? Council must take accountability, and we want to know who can we contact higher up that we can talk about the councils in our area. And the last point, in Reservoir Hills, our infrastructure has not been being upgraded for the past 30, 35, 40 years. We are having students being put into a 3 or 4 bedroom house, which goes up to 100 students in a house. That means the infrastructure has not been upgraded. There's 100 students in a 3 or 4 bedroom house, and these lovely landlords are staying in lovely lush places, and we, the people that live in Reservoir Hills, have to see our roads burning. We cannot go to work, and the students are burning because there are no Wi-Fi and they don't have the luxuries in life. This has to be stopped. They have earmarked on Baton Drive, right up to Brindley, all of Varsity Drive for student accommodation. Come on, guys. Your infrastructure is dead. Please stop this. Thank you.
Well done, Ish.
That was Mr. Ish Pralad. On that note, we'll take a break for some adverts, and we'll continue our discussion after the break.
This segment is brought to you by Kenfield Auto, your RMI approved service and repair specialist. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport. Kenfield Auto.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربنا إنك من تدخل النار فقد أخزيته وما للظالمين من أنصار.
Car won't start?
Kenfield Auto.
Noisy brakes?
Kenfield Auto.
Due for a service?
Kenfield Auto. Kenfield Auto, the answer to all your car problems. Your service and repair specialist for your VW, Audi, Suzuki, Toyota, or just about any vehicle. Kenfield Auto, your RMI and insurance approved workshop to handle them all. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport. Call us on 031 207 2399. Kenfield Auto.
Able to disable, give the gift of giving. Every step matters. For many, mobility is a dream. This drive provides wheelchairs and walkers to those who need them most. Your generosity can restore independence, dignity, and freedom. Help us bring the joy of movement to someone today. Together, we can transform lives. Donate now. Empower the disabled. Call outreach on 031 208 1601.
Calling all vendors, the Durban Shopping Fest 2025 is your opportunity to showcase your brand at the ultimate Durban summer shopping experience. Join us from April 25th to the 28th at Durban Exhibition Center, where thousands of shoppers will complete their summer shopping while indulging in a variety of cuisines, all under one roof. Don't miss out on this incredible chance to connect with eager buyers and grow your brand. Limited stalls available. Secure yours today.
Radio Al-Ansar, Durban, 90.4 FM, Peter Maritzburg, 105.6 FM.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to News in Focus live on Radio Al-Ansar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Maritzburg 105.6 FM, and audio streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Let me introduce our guests for this evening. We have Asad Ghaffar. He's the chairman of Etequeni Ratepayers Protest Movement. Asad, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al-Ansar.
Thank you for having me, Brother Yunus. Jazakallah.
Shukran. Then we have Ish Pralad. Ish is the president of Etequeni Ratepayers and Residents Association, another combined ratepayer association, hailing from Reservoir Hills. He's been previously in my program, and a very outspoken individual. Ish, good evening and welcome to News in Focus.
Oh, welcome. Thank you so much for inviting me over. Really appreciate that.
We also have Rose Cortez. She's the deputy chair of Etequeni Ratepayers Protest Movement. Rose, good evening and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al-Ansar International.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having us.
Okay, I'm going to kick off with Rose this evening because we heard clips of Asad and Ish. We'll give them a chance to just regather their thoughts, and we'll ask them the difficult questions. So I thought, let me kick off with the easy question for Rose. Rose, we spoke about, the kind of services we expect for what we're paying. When I did the preamble, now you've been in contact with residents for the last couple of years, both in Westville and other areas, and from the feedback you're receiving from the different residents, are we really receiving value for money for the taxes that we pay?
Well, no, categorically not. I think the best analogy I can make to the situation is we're going to the shops to buy a loaf of bread, and the cashier is taking half of it away before we leave, but we're paying full price. And I think that echoes across the country, but I know that in the communities that I work with, that's their daily life. They have no water, but they pay for it. And they pay more for it. So their water's disconnected because there's an outage, but their bill doesn't go down because air pumps through those meters and they're paying for air anyway. Same thing with electricity, even though load shedding is gone, touch wood. We have transformers failing all of the time. Communities have been out for extended periods, up to 6 days. And that's certainly not value for money. It certainly isn't. It doesn't justify a tariff increase.
Now, Rose, in terms of, the infrastructure, we know that we had rain in the last 24 hours and, there's been a lot of caution on the roads because there's a lot of potholes, some sinkholes. There's been some repairs done for which they haven't been fixed up, if they're digging for underground cables, etc. And when people are driving in these roads, if they see, the potholes are filled with water or the sinkholes, many of them drive over this and they damage their axles and their rims, etc. And at the same time, the sewer overflow and stormwater overflow is making some roads, not usable. Now, in terms of the infrastructure that's deteriorated over the last few decades, what are the community's concerns about these infrastructure damages?
Well, it just affects them in a very real way on the daily. Going to work is an obstacle course with these heavy rains that hit us periodically. Our stormwater systems aren't maintained, so it exacerbates the flooding. Homes are being completely washed away and destroyed. So it's not just the roads, but it's affecting people's properties as well because the stormwater drainage just isn't sufficient. And, as Ish was saying in his address to the leadership today, they just keep bringing in new developments on top of a very overburdened and broken infrastructure without giving any thought to maintaining or upgrading it. It's got a very real impact on the lives of families across the city. And it's time that they sit up and take notice.
Now, Ish, I want to bring you in. You're concerned about the infrastructure damages and lack of upgrading, primarily because you've got extra users.
Correct.
You spoke about students living in large numbers in rented accommodation, not only in the flats, but also in these 3-bedroom houses. But you also mentioned in a previous program that we've got a large amount of informal settlements around the urban area.
Correct.
And these are users of electricity, water, stormwater and sewer. And that's why we have an overflow. Perhaps you want to comment on the infrastructure cannot cope with the users.
Okay. If you look at it, Reservoir Hills has 6,500 houses. Okay. 6,500 houses times 3 is about 18 to 20,000 people. Now we have, in one house, we have 100 students. If you drive through whole of Varsity Drive, there may be about 30 houses with 100 students each, or 20 or 30 students. So now you already got 20,000 formal. Now you got another 15,000 students. Then we got 14 informal settlements. That you got another 20,000. So that means the same infrastructure is there. So we actually, the same infrastructure is basically feeding. That's 20. That's 35. 45, 55, close to 60,000 people.
So it's not designed to cater for these people.
No, it's never been upgraded for the past 30 years. So how can an infrastructure built for 20,000 people cater for 60,000 people now. It's obvious that, I mean, if you look at, take a house, for instance, there's houses in Vasi Drive are being turned into student accommodation, right? Now, you must know, in the 3 or 4 bedroom house, 6 people live there. So 6 people are using that toilet. Now, you've got 100 people living in the same house using the same toilet. So it's basically 1 to 6 and 100 to 1. So it doesn't make sense. So why does the municipality, before doing their homework, upgrade the infrastructure, right, and then bring in these new developments? Must remember something. I went to the planning department and I said to them, guys, how did you allow this house to have so many students? No, it's been allocated for students. I said, what about the infrastructure? We don't know. So I said to them, you'll have double standards here, right? You are passing a house for 100 students. Who gave you all that authority to pass for 100 students when the infrastructure is still the same? If you cannot repair the infrastructure, please stop passing plans for accommodation until the municipality can upgrade. Otherwise, we're not interested. But it falls under deaf ears. We had 22,000 petitions going into the municipality to stop accommodation. Nope. There's accommodations will carry on. We can do nothing about it. You drive into Reservoir Hills, you see these campus buses. They drive into such a narrow road. They turn into like dead ends. They don't care whatever they're driving onto. They drive onto the curb, they smash the curb. Now these landlords who have put this houses have taken the pavement that you walk, have made it into a bus stop. So the bus turns into a short road and then it stands near the accommodation because the students cannot walk maybe 100 meters on Vasti Drive where that's a main thoroughfare. So you can park the bus, they can walk up 100 meters. No, they want the bus right to the doorstep. They must get into the bus. They must actually walk into the bus. So where is the logic in this? And the planning department, where are you getting this kind of passing this type of plan without consulting the people of Reservoir Hills? And you must remember, there's more coming on. There is another huge student accommodation that's going to come onto our area. It's going to burst the seams, but they're passing the plans.
Now, you're saying there's a lot of flats converted to student accommodation, and in each flat, they've got an overload of students.
Correct.
So that particular flat ought to have, say, 40 tenants with maybe 2-3 family members. You're ending off 10 times more.
Correct.
So there's an overload on the infrastructure,
of
the
course.
sewer, the stormwater, and then you've got the students using transport. There's an overkill on the roads.
Overkill on the roads.
The buses are really messing up the infrastructure, etc. So it's one problem leading to another. Now, coming back to the question of law enforcement and planning. Now, these landlords that are allowing and converting their accommodation to student accommodation, are they getting permission to have so many students accommodated? Like, for example, a house that's got, say, 3 or 4 bedrooms. Effectively, you've got a family of 5 or 6 living, and now you're saying you've got about 60 students, 5 of them in each room with 5 beds.
Correct.
Is the planning department and law enforcement departments aware of this?
They are aware because they
grant the permission.
The landlord already now starts building a double-story house into triple stories, the outbuildings into double stories. So what actually happens is they actually building from boundary to boundary. They're putting guard huts from the pavement to the house, right? You got security guard huts. That's all being passed by the municipality. How are they doing this if the infrastructure has not been upgraded? Number one. They should not allow these houses to be passed, right? And if you take the flats, for instance, as you said, 40 families, it's not more 40 family students are there. They're putting 4 or 5 students in a room. So that means it's 3 times the amount.
Now, in terms of the authorities, the point that is coming across clearly that there's no control of the usage of the infrastructure because it's been overburdened.
Correct.
You mentioned that it's exacerbated by the fact that there's a large number of informal settlements and they're growing all the time.
Correct.
And these informal settlements are using water, they're stealing electricity, they're utilizing the stormwater and sewer services, and they don't have proper sanitation facilities. So that's overburdening the infrastructure big time, which resulting in a collapse. And
Correct.
this is why in Varsity Drive, those bridges collapse over and above the storm and flooding.
Right.
But the load of it has caused the problem.
Well, if you look at it right now, I got a call before I came into the studio. That Quarry Road, all those former residents living on Quarry are blackout because something blew, right? And it's owing to the overburden of the informal. So they have no lights. They don't know what time they'll get fixed, what time they'll have lights. But what are they paying for? As Rose said, yeah, you know what? You are paying for something that you are not getting. Right? We have days. We had an outage for close to 4 to 5 days in Reservoir Hills, but our bill does not change. The bill is still the same. So what is happening to our money?
So basically, they're very efficient in recovering the money.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And going ahead with disconnection of electricity and water to the innocent people who are not getting electricity and water, so they're not getting value for money.
Correct.
Asad, I want to bring you in. You were in that civil society meeting this morning, and you made some pertinent points. And some of the pertinent points were around, what is government there for? Now, obviously, you made a critical point that the ruling party, the African National Congress, is controlling some of the major municipalities, whether it's by coalition or not. For the last 3 decades, the ruling party was in control not only of government, but the major municipalities throughout the country, save for the Western Cape and a few other places. And those municipalities are somewhat different, and we have to be real. Now, I want you to briefly comment on the fact that you are representing a whole lot of ratepayers from the different areas in Westville and the like. And the common concerns are coming up. But instead of the municipality and government responding, things are getting progressively worse. Perhaps you want to comment on exactly to what extent, besides corruption, maladministration, which we know is the order of the day, is it just incompetent officials or government's disregard to the plight of the communities and the concerns that are being raised?
Yeah, look, Yunus, I think it encompasses all of what you're talking about. So, firstly, you have incompetent individuals, and that's one part. And that's fine too, because if you bring in someone who doesn't, as an example, I'm going to use a municipal manager. So you bring in a cadre deployment. He has no understanding of what it takes to be a municipal manager. Doesn't have or very little understanding of administrative law, policy, etc., etc. But if the ANC or whoever, the city managers, the mayor, whoever, take it upon themselves to say, you know what, let's upskill him, let's make him competent, then we can say fine. But you take an incompetent person and you leave him there. But there's a purpose to putting an incompetent person, because that opens the doors for corruption. If you bring in a weak CFO, he's not going to tell you, no, I'm sorry, you can't take this money. He's going to say, tell me how much you want. So it's all strategic. Now, if you look at the Municipal Systems Act, it is clear. And if you look at the Structures Act, it is clear. It tells you that the political arm and the administrative arm needs to be separated. It also tells you that the municipal manager needs to be apolitical. The municipal manager needs to go through a vetting process of all political parties. He doesn't report to a political party. So cadre deployment in itself is against policy, because if you put a city manager there and at the next government election, let's say he's a cadre deployee of the ANC, and in a couple of months' time, you have an election and the ANC are not in power, that municipal manager still keeps his position because he wasn't a cadre deployee. He was appointed on the basis of his job. So let's say the DA came in. This municipal manager still needs to serve the DA. But what we're seeing now is because of cadre deployees, this is where the problem comes. Then on top of it, the corruption, I have to tell you, Brother Yunus, is what finished this country. We finished. and if people think that, you know what, someone's going to come and wave a magic wand and tomorrow everything is fine, it's not going to happen. To rebuild this country is going to take nothing less than 20 to 30 years, or maybe even longer. And I'm talking about bringing it to its former glory. Your airports work, you have a national carrier, your post office works, they deliver on time, your schools function, your education system functions, your hospitals function. The biggest concern we have at the moment, and this, the ANC needs to take it on the chin. They've been borrowing money like it's no tomorrow. Our interest that we pay on the loan, the foreign debt, far exceeds our GDP of this country, which means whatever money, revenue that we collect from taxes, a lot of it is going to serve us towards the debt, the interest on the debt, not the debt, the interest on the debt. So there's no leftover for schools. There's no leftover for education. There's no leftover for roads. And this is where we are. So let's say we do get a magic wand and we put a new government. It's going to take that new government a long time to decrease the foreign debt. So we may not be around, but they'll be paying. Your grandchildren, your grandchildren's children will be paying this debt. And this is the people we elected. That's the problem.
So we got bleak times ahead of us. And at the same time, we've got what we call a GNU in place now. And we got municipalities that are basically facing administration, most of them. And we got a government that's basically, if you can use the word bankrupt, it may be an appropriate word. And it's cause for concern because over the last 3 decades, this country hasn't been administered properly. And we have to look at ways and means of dealing with this whole issue. And just to answer the question that you're raising is that the government's urge to push up the 1% VAT is basically to bring in some revenue to really deal with some of the challenges they have. So on that note, we'll take a break for the news, and after the news, we'll unpack some of the issues you've raised.
یا رسول اللہ تیرے در کی فضاؤں کو سلام، یا رسول اللہ تیرے در کی فضاؤں کو سلام، یا رسول اللہ تیرے در کی فضاؤں کو سلام، یا رسول اللہ تیرے در کی فضاؤں کو سلام، گنبدِ خضرا کی ٹھنڈی ٹھنڈی چھاؤں کو سلام، گنبدِ خضرا کی ٹھنڈی ٹھنڈی چھاؤں کو سلام، والہانہ جو طواف روضۂ اقدس کرے، والہانہ جو طواف روضۂ اقدس کرے، مستوں بے خود وجد میں آتی ہواؤں کو سلام، مستوں بے خود وجد میں آتی ہواؤں کو سلام، مانگتے ہیں جو وہاں شاہوں گدا بے امتیاز، مانگتے ہیں جو وہاں شاہوں گدا بے امتیاز، دل کی ہر دھڑکن میں شامل دعاؤں کو سلام، دل کی ہر دھڑکن میں شامل دعاؤں کو سلام، काबाए काबा के खुश मंजर नजारों पर दुरूद काबाए काबा के खुश मंजर नजारों पर दुरूद मस्जिद-ए नबवी की सुबह शामों को सलाम मस्जिद-ए नबवी की सुबह शामों को सलाम जो पढ़ा करते हैं रोज़ो शब तेरे दरबार में जो पढ़ा करते हैं रोज़ो शब तेरे
An informative Islamic global perspective. This is Al Ansar News.
Making news, the 16th of April, the news from Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Maritzburg 105.6 FM. KwaZulu-Natal Disaster Management Team are on high alert amid severe weather warning. American Monina. Disaster management teams in KwaZulu-Natal are on high alert after the South African Weather Service issued a warning for disruptive rains. The areas affected include Etegwini, Lembe, Umgungundlovu, Ugu, and Harry Gwala. The Provincial Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs spokesperson, Senzelo Mzila, says the MEC for Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Tulasizwe Buthelezi, has assured residents that the disaster management teams will continue to be on alert and monitor the weather conditions. However, the chairman of the Quarry Road Informal Settlement, Zoe Silenzimande, has this to say on their plight.
Since the rain started last night, we were pretty afraid of what maybe it might come up as. So it rained from last night until this morning. And yes, people who are living next to the river, they were quite afraid that maybe they're going to get washed away. And some of them try to go to the next to the road whereby it's a little bit far from the river, and most of them slept into their friends who are living next to the river, far from the river. At the moment, we haven't received any help regarding reallocation, but we do have high hopes because today we were visited by the MEC. So I believe that maybe they're going to make a plan whereby we can be reallocated. I think most of the people will actually have hope.
More news. A suspected murderer and extortionist in KwaZulu-Natal has been captured after nearly 5 years on the run. Linda Hlonga, also known as Mchinja or Putin, was arrested in Midrand, Gauteng yesterday. He has been on KwaZulu-Natal's most wanted list after he failed to appear in court on charges of illegal possession of a firearm and ammunition. KwaZulu-Natal police spokesperson Robert Nechuanda says Putin is also linked to the murder of his girlfriend and her mother. They were shot in Pinetown last month. The police says Linda Hlongwa, known as Mchinja, is believed to have been extorting money from scholar transport owners, tax shop owners, and local taxis in the areas of Marion Hill and the nearby townships. Money is now over 300 million rands has been allocated to 4 KwaZulu-Natal municipalities to help to boost the supply of water. Ugu, Newcastle, and Majuba will receive 50 million rands each, while Zululand gets 55 million rands. KwaZulu-Natal's cooperative governance spokesperson Senzo Mzila says the Zululand municipality will get another allocation of 270 million rands under the regional bulk infrastructure grants. Mzila says the grants are key tools to help authorities and municipalities expand access to water services. In other stories now, an American pastor has been reunited with his family after he was kidnapped in Rebecca last week. Police shot and killed 3 suspects during a mission to rescue the pastor yesterday. Josh Sullivan was kidnapped while delivering a sermon last Thursday. Eastern Cape Hawk spokesperson Avele Fumba says the 45-year-old was held at a safe house in Kwa Matlaki. Fumba says Sullivan was found inside the same vehicle used by the gunmen during the shootout. Fumba says that they are now searching for more suspects. More news. The asbestos trial of former Free State Premier Ace Magashule resumes. The case relates to a 255 million rands tender awarded in 2014 to audit and replace asbestos roofs. The tender was granted to a company owned by businessman Edwin Sodi. Magashule and 17 other co-accused face charges including fraud, corruption and money laundering. Now, international story, a social justice charity has uncovered evidence that Muslim prisoners in England are disproportionately subjected to excessive force, including the use of batons and painful restraint techniques in a majority of prisons with significant Muslim populations. The charity Maslahah petitioned 9 prisons with significant Muslim populations for detailed reports on staff use of batons and rigid bar handcuffs against inmates. Reports says the request covered 2023, the latest full year available. The results show that in 8 out of 9 facilities, the staff was more likely to use batons, restrictive cuffs, and painful restraint techniques on Muslim prisoners than on any other inmate. The charity further sought data on coercive restraint methods, including thumb and wrist flexion, inverted wrist hold, and the mandibular angle putting pressure on a nerve below the ear. The figures have been disclosed amid demands for a crackdown on gangs within the prison estate after claims that they are effectively run in some prisons. Your weather at 20 degrees, a quick reminder of our top story. KwaZulu-Natal disaster management are on high alert amid severe weather warning. That's the news.
As heavy snow and bitter winds descend on Gaza, Afghanistan, and Lebanon, hundreds of displaced and refugee families struggle to survive the winter. Without adequate shelter or clothing, the harsh weather threatens lives. Donate towards AMA's Winter Rescue Campaign to provide the food, fuel, and shelter needed by families in Gaza, Lebanon, and Afghanistan to survive the elements and provide warmth to those in need.
Welcome to Simplex Radio. Visit our showroom for the full range of car audio. Our TV department carries top brands with quality LED panels, full HD to Ultra HD, and now the experience of Super Ultra HD. Visit our theater rooms and transform your home with brands like Onkyo, Integra, Denon, Boston Acoustics, Yamaha, and more for quality audio visual experience. Now available, full range of home appliances. A one-stop shopping experience. Call 031 306 4029 or Kenilworth Park, 202 Brickville Road, Overport. Simplex Radio, the name you can trust.
Calling all vendors, the Durban Shopping Fest 2025 is your opportunity to showcase your brand at the ultimate Durban summer shopping experience. Join us from April 25th to the 28th at Durban Exhibition Center, where thousands of shoppers will complete their summer shopping while indulging in a variety of cuisines, all under one roof. Don't miss out on this incredible chance to connect with eager buyers and grow your brand. Limited stalls available. Secure yours today.
Durban Halal Meats, your premier source for top quality halal certified meats in South Africa. With over a decade of experience, we deliver succulent lamb, tender beef, juicy chicken, and flavorful mutton to restaurants, caterers, the hospitality industry, and your table. We're also the first halal butcher for you to shop online. Enjoy competitive pricing and personalized solutions crafted just for you. Find us on durbanhalalmeats.co.za or visit our store at 84 Felix Dlamini Road. Durban Halal Meats, where quality meets trust.
Kruger Rands are a timeless investment. Every day, thousands trust Issa Bullion to buy, store, and sell them effortlessly. With 16 years of global expertise, we make gold trading simple. Trade 24/5 from anywhere on our user-friendly platform, a first for South Africa. Each Kruger Rand is fully insured and stored in high-security vaults. Enjoy competitive pricing and guaranteed buyback. Issa Bullion, built on trust, driven by expertise, focused on your future. Visit isabullion.co.za today.
When you give water, you're reaching out to drought-affected areas, bringing them to life. Fresh water to drink, to clean, and to grow. That's the power of water. Donate now to Islamic Relief.
Listen to News in Focus on Radio Al-Ansar, Durban 90.4 and Pietermaritzburg 105.6 FM every Wednesday from 8 p.m. with Yunus Sacoor. That's 8 p.m. every Wednesday, Radio Al-Ansar, keeping you informed.
खुदा ने मुझको दिया माँ तेरी दुआओं से, माँ तेरी दुआओं से मिला है जो भी मिला, माँ तेरी दुआओं से, माँ तेरी दुआओं से, माँ तेरी दुआओं से जहाँ जहाँ भी गया दिल बिछाने लगे, जहाँ जहाँ भी गया दिल बिछाने लगे, ये है तेरा मेरा माँ तेरी दुआओं से, तेरी दुआओं से, माँ तेरी दुआओं से, माँ तेरी दुआओं से, माँ की दुआ जन्नत की हवा की दुआ, जन्नत की की दुआ, जन्नत की हवा की दुआ, जन्नत की हवा, ये कामयाबियाँ शोहरत कदम कदम पे मिली, ये कामयाबियाँ शोहरत कदम कदम पे मिली, नसीब ऐसा मिला.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Marisburg 105.6 FM, and audio streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Before the news break, we had quite a vibrant discussion on the service deliverables that we expect from government and municipalities, and all our guests clearly indicated that we're not getting value for money for the rates that we pay, for the taxes that we pay, for the utilities that we pay for, and then overall we're going south to such an extent where our infrastructure is being damaged and it cannot cope with the current supply, and government's revenue that it's deriving cannot afford to even pay their debt, and there's serious financial problems emanating over and above a serious decline in service delivery. Now, I just want to briefly pick up on some of the debates that have been going on around the charges of rates and the calculations thereof. And there were indications that the eThekwini municipality is charging much higher rates than other larger municipalities. That's one area of concern. And my recollection is that rates are based on the valuation of the property, but the randage is what's determined by the municipality, and that randage is not necessarily linked to the operating budget. In other words, there is a much higher charge in eThekwini than other provinces. For example, in the Western Cape, the rates investigations have revealed are much lower than eThekwini. Perhaps maybe there's more businesses and tourism is on the increase there, but you cannot, sort of use that as a comparison, because Durban's supposed to be a world-class city attracting a lot of tourists, but because of our deterioration in our infrastructure and our beaches not being of the required standard, it is the responsibility of government and the municipalities for the deterioration. So I want to bring in Rose Cortes. Rose, perhaps you want to comment when your organization did some comparison of the rates charges by eThekwini in comparison with other municipalities, and exactly what is the feeling of the communities out there that we're being charged too much rates, and as a result of which we're not only receiving value for services, but we also got to look at other options relative to decreasing rates as well as improving service delivery. Perhaps you want to comment.
Yeah, in simplistic terms, I think, for the layman who doesn't understand randage and calculations and allocations, for your regular eThekwini residents to look at Cape Town and the relative efficiency of that metro as opposed to ours, and just a direct comparison between the fact that they pay basically half of the rates that eThekwini pays. It kind of just feels unfair, and I think it leaves quite a bad taste in our mouths, and it's made a lot of people angry. It's made a lot of people bitter, and I think we're at a point, and rightfully so, where the trust deficit between the ratepayer and residents and our city and the leadership is at an all-time low. And they've earned that trust deficit. It's not like we are being cynical. We've tried to trust them and we've given them this chance. And under normal circumstances, the 100% correct thing to be doing is paying your bills on time, because we need a functioning and a working city. But these are not normal circumstances, because despite the fact that we pay on time, the city's not working for us. And you'll see more and more people falling into debt loops with the city because they're paying for services that are being disconnected, and dysfunctional billing, and people are just at their wits' end. So for us, what we're saying is, yes, it's responsible to pay your bills, and that should be your normal response as a law-abiding citizen. But right now, we kind of feel like it's more irresponsible to be paying money over to a city that isn't putting that money to its purpose. And we feel like we have enough skilled and capable people inside our communities who can affect changes inside our own wards, and at a fraction of the cost, that'll probably serve with far superior longevity and quality than what is being carried out at the moment. So if the city is incapable and unwilling, then I can guarantee you that more and more communities are becoming more and more capable and far more willing to do it ourselves.
No, thanks, Rose. I think what indications are coming through, there's a lot of active ratepayer associations that are raising concerns about poor service delivery, but want to get involved themselves and prove to government and local government that we've got local contractors that can do a far better job at a far lower price with no corruption or maladministration. Now, I want to make a quick reference before I bring in our economist to the meeting that took place yesterday between the ANC leadership and the business sector. Now, at the presentation, and that meeting was chaired by both, Jeff Radebe and Mike Mabuyakulu, who are the two senior ANC politicians that have been deployed in KZN to listen to the different groupings as to what's going wrong with service delivery. And they basically urge business community to help the party's renewal campaign. Business responded by questioning the party's failure to act against corruption in the two biggest municipalities, which is basically eThekwini and Msunduzi in KZN. Now, the ANC is talking about its renewal policy, and that has been on the table for the last couple of years, and nothing's happened. Now, the chamber also complained, that is the Business Chamber of Commerce, the government's failure to protect local businesses, particularly the automotive sector, which found itself having to compete with imported goods while the same goods are being produced locally. Now, we know China is producing everything at far cheaper rates. So there's no option, but people are importing. Now, if the Chinese can do that, why can't our individuals be trained to be competitive? Basically, whilst that statement was being made, The former deputy mayor of eThekwini municipality, Belinda Scott, she was also a politician both at national and provincial, complained about the collapse of infrastructure in eThekwini, and this is what Ish was talking about. She was speaking in a capacity as the deputy president of the chamber. She blasted her party's failure, she's part of the ANC, to fix the city, which was once a tourism jewel in the country. And our economist talks about KZN being, a great tourism, province. And she went on to say that once beautiful beaches had to be closed because of E. coli and sewer leaks, which is still the order of the day. Now, the leadership responded and committed to act without fear or favor against corruption, particularly in the municipalities where the party is in control. And Assad, indicated that most of these municipalities have got incompetent staff who are not being adequately trained. But the former mayor, in many of my programs, indicated that he's ashamed to say a lot of these senior officials, they come in the morning, they sign the register, they come and sign it in the afternoon, and during the day they're going and doing business on behalf of companies they own with the municipality. So what Radebe is saying as a coordinator of this particular grouping, when we were appointed, we took a decision that we will assess performances of our deployees, be it in the provincial government or municipalities, and we will not hesitate to recall them. Corruption and malfeasance will not be tolerated, said Radebe. Now, this is a bold statement because Assad has mentioned that nothing's being done. It's business as usual. Fraud, corruption, maladministration is being reported. The relevant forensic units in the municipalities and in government are investigating, but there's no consequential management, no action against. And we know against politicians, court cases are going on for years on end. So from your meeting today, Assad, do you believe that the politicians are serious about addressing the issues, or this is another way of window dressing?
Brother Yunus, I think you need to understand that when you're talking to politicians, you must always remember you're talking to a politician. He'll tell you what you need to hear before the election. And after the election, he's nowhere to be found.
And 5 years later, he'll come back.
And 5 years later, he'll come back and we are in an abusive relationship. People fall for all this rhetoric. In fact, some people were so glad that they had this meeting. People were excited. They were like, hey, the ANC called us to this meeting. Guess what? Hey, check who I met. I met Jeff Radebe. I met this. You're getting sold. Because he's a politician. He's going to tell you what you want to hear. And if you fall for it, you're going to let your people down. I'm telling you.
You mean this is one of about 50 other engagements without any outcomes?
100%. You know this. You've seen this. We've been around the block too many times to fall into the same. I don't want to say the word is. So it's a family.
Trap.
It's a very family radio station. But the thing here is, politicians are politicians. We must never ever forget that. And many people have been talking to me, and I'm going to be honest with you, Brother Yunus. When we started this, we had no ambition to be politicians. We'll never be politicians. People have been, I'm being open with you. The ANC themselves have approached me. I had the DA approach me. I had Al Jama approach me. I had people from the IFP approach me. Hey, you know what? You're a community person. Come. Then I have other people coming to me. No, let's stand as an independent. No, Baba. We're not doing this for politics. We're doing this to fix what is broken. Once you become a politician, you sell your soul. You never, ever give off your best. And this is the challenge. And with all due respect to Jeff Radebe and the like, the fact is he is a politician. And he needs your vote more than anything else. So he's going to tell you what you need to hear. And if they win, I can tell you now, we can sign something, a paper, whatever. Let the ANC win the next local government election. And you come back and tell me you picked up the phone and phoned Jeff and you got a meeting with him. Let's see.
We just want to chat briefly on what you mentioned, and I don't want to lose track. We got local government elections coming up in 2026. Service delivery is going south. Everything is collapsing. Finances is collapsing. employees in the municipality are not good enough to do the job. Majority of them, they may differ, but if they were able to do their work, you would have seen service delivery on the ground. It happened in the past. It's not happening. It's deteriorating. And the political parties that are in control are helping themselves. They're coming during election time, wanting to fix the city. The ANC is talking about its renewal policy, which they spoke about in the previous election. KZN in particular is a sharp focus. And if you don't know about it, it is clear that MK has walked all over the ANC because we were all part of the ruling party when democracy emerged back in 1994, because the ANC stood for something else then. The Freedom Charter spoke about opportunities for everybody. It didn't speak about discrimination. It didn't speak about corruption, fraud, etc. And even those leaders are embarrassed to what's happening. And Jeff and others were part of the old regime. So they're concerned. And generally, they may be coming and saying, let's be honest, let's listen to the people. But your concern is how they're going to make the changes when their hands are tied, because they don't have the support anymore. Now, the ratepayers' objective is to improve service delivery, and Rose touched on some important points. She mentioned that, listen, government need to relook with local government on the strategies of service delivery, because the officials inside are not keen to deliver. They're there to fill their pockets with high salaries. And we don't want to discuss the salaries of local government and government officials. Those are market related. They're earning big bucks. Politicians are earning big bucks. As you said, they're going for another salary increase. So a bulk of the income is going towards salaries of employees, and the other lot is going towards corruption, maladministration. So maybe less than 50% is left for service delivery, over and above other problems. Now, just to pick up on what Rose is saying, from a ratepayer's perspective, where the position you sat with for the last number of years, you are hearing the people out. Your concern is about how can we improve the services? And it's getting worse because you can't have so many electricity and water outages, stormwater blockages, where you're paying top dollar, but you're getting nothing in return. What is the alternative? I know on the political side, we can touch on later on, do we really foresee a good political future? And if the answer is no, then where are we heading towards? But on the service delivery side, what is an interim arrangement over and above going to courts and saying, let's withhold rates? Can we not talk to the administrators in local government that, subcontract people from the ward to do work, like what Ish was saying? You may have more efficiency and better oversight and control.
Look, I mean, that has always been a suggestion. There's talk now that that's going to be implemented. It's left to be seen. I mean, they're listening. They're listening. I mean, a lot of the stuff that the eThekwini is now implementing are stuff that we've put down on paper, black and white, to them. So they're taking some of those ideas. But interestingly enough, I mean, Ish and I were just talking in the break. The Ward 110 by-election took place today. Tomorrow morning, we will know if MKP is the stronger party. It's going to be the litmus test for what's going to happen in the local government election. If MKP takes Ward 110.
Which area is that for the benefit of our listeners?
So it's when you're coming Red Hill, so it's a mixture. It's actually currently a DA ward.
Did the DA council resign or?
No, he was he was apparently fired. The DA fired him, but he was collecting his salary for a couple of months. So that's another.
So he was removed, so they had to go for a by-election.
They had to go for a
He was a ward councillor.
He was a ward councillor. So it's when you're going towards Schlanger, the back road, it's that side, Red Hill, runs parallel to North Coast Road. So there's informal settlements there, which can influence the vote. But predominantly, it's been a DA ward.
So yesterday was a by-election.
Today. We will know the result.
So which parties were contesting?
Well, it's between an independent, the DA, and the MKP.
ANC didn't contest.
Well, ANC would have contested, but I mean, they've never ever held that ward. So it's interesting to see what that outcome would be. If MKP takes that ward, we guaranteed you will see all the ANC councillors in eThekwini move over to MKP. And if that happens, we're in a crisis. If this was a business, this municipality was a business, It would have been closed down years ago. But because we, the ratepayers, keep funding this thing, we are actually growing this tumor. We're making it bigger and we're making it worse for ourselves, not for anybody else. In terms of upliftment or equalizing imbalances of the past, this government took the standard of living of those who were higher and brought it to a lower standard. That's what they've done. Instead of taking the lowest standard of the people and bringing it up. So eventually you will find more people going and staying in the Jondolos because you can't afford it. You go to Phoenix, go to Chatsworth, people haven't paid their rates. People are owing hundreds of thousands, 700,000. Some people are owing the municipality more money than the value of their house. And this is going to affect more and more and more people. It is going to get progressively worse. So now, alhamdulillah, those who got the money, they're saying, you know what? You're talking about service delivery, no lights, no water. It doesn't affect me. I got a borehole, I got solar, I got inverter. I'm not worried about the pothole too because I got run flat tires. So you carry on, you stick with your problems. I'm Alani.
That makes up 5% of the community.
Yes, but a lot of them have that attitude. And because they have that attitude, they're not even prepared to support those who are trying to make a difference. Because we need those people. We can't go to a person who got no money to say, support us as an organization to make things better. You go to the business community is exactly the same. They're disinterested because they're getting business from the government, from the municipality. So when you talk to them, they're like, hey, you know what, I support you. In principle, I support you. But I can't be seen with you because if they know I'm supporting you, I'll lose a contract. So how do we fix?
Your business might decline as well.
100%. So how do you start the process of fixing?
I want to bring in Masid here. Masid, you may have heard Ghaffar speaking about some of the concerns raised in terms of the financing of government and the fact that huge loans were acquired and the government is battling to pay back these loans, and the interest charges, as you mentioned previously, is quite high. But before we do that, last week we were quite concerned about the tariff adjustments by your friend Donald Trump, and he took a somersault and did a 90% or 90-day pause, and he started to go for China. So everybody is saying, is this guy right in his head? But in the end of the day, the markets are back to normal. The price of petrol is expected to increase. What caused this somersault or roundabout change?
Sure. I think we'll start off on the global side. I think the key change was that he asked for he put in place a 90-day pause. So 90-day pause, what he meant was that every day was some different tariff he was introducing, and he was playing tit for tat with China in particular. And then I think when the weekend where they noticed that there was a huge amount of pullback in the markets on that Thursday and Friday, and then obviously on the advice of his advisors and whoever it may be, on that Monday he came and he introduced the 90-day pause. So that obviously had a significant impact. But I think importantly, China, everybody else, there was a huge amount of many of the other countries, whether it was Japan, Korea, many of the European nations, African nations, some of the African nations as well. They obviously, those tariffs do impact them. South Africa included. Although South Africa, to a large extent, if you look at they talked about a 30% tariff, but many of our major minerals were excluded from that. So platinum, gold, those major minerals were actually excluded from the tariff. So the impact on us was actually less than 40% of our exports into the US, which was still significant, but not as bad as what it would have been for if it was for the full amount. China, on the other hand, did not back down. And that's, I think, the point that many people are realizing, that we're not in the same world that we were in 20, 30 years back. The world has changed. It's no more dominated by a Western power or specifically superpowers, be it the US or Europe per se. There is an increasingly growing power that's coming from the East, whether it's China, whether it's India, and Russia is obviously going through their own challenges and the like. But there is China in particular is huge. And importantly, it has a significant impact both financially and also from a military perspective. And that's allows them the opportunity to defend what they have to defend, and to say, well, you can say what you want, but we will do what we want as well. So I think when there was this sort of constant tit for tat was going on, and I think he realized also that there's only so much that China is not going to back down; they'll continue. He put this 90-day pause in place, and obviously markets reacted very positively on that. We saw the rand going back from close to $20. It's gone back to 18.80, so it has strengthened. And the stock markets have gone back to 90,000 points on the JSE, so back to where they were prior to that. So I think there has been a turnaround on the back of that. However, we are living in a uncertain era when you have a president such as Donald Trump around. There's a lot of uncertainty in terms of policy, a lot of uncertainty in terms of actions. And when you have that, especially with a country like the US, which is still a major dominant player from an economic perspective, particularly, it does have an impact on markets. And the problem is he speaks from the hip, he shoots from the hip, he doesn't think through sometimes what he says, and it has a major impact on markets. He's being investigated for potentially, well, not him, but I mean, there's talk about him and around market manipulation. Because on that same day before he put the 90-day pause, a few hours earlier, he's joking with some of his billionaire friends, and he's saying, he's made $2 billion, and he's made $2 billion in the stock market over the last day or two. I mean, on the back of, do you know certain information that he's going to talk about this policy change in a few hours' time, and will that have an impact on their wealth and stuff? And so there was those issues as well. So I think net is going to be still a volatile markets over the coming months. And importantly, like for example, this evening, the Fed chair Jerome Powell in the US talked about uncertainty that tariffs can have on inflation. Remember, when you're introducing that type of tariffs, previously when there was no tariffs or very low tariffs, cost of goods produced across the world was very cheap. We can talk about it. When the likes of Mr. Price, Pep, Ackermans and the like, over the last 20 years, has had a major impact on what we pay for the price of clothing. Before we used to either go to a Woolies and the like, and you had to pay for a specific T-shirt. 20 years ago, you were paying $100 for a T-shirt. Today, you can go still into a Mr. Price and pay $50 for a T-shirt. So the cost of goods has decreased substantially over the last, because of the manufacturing countries such as China, Vietnam, Indonesia, those places, it has brought inflation down. Now, when you're introducing tariffs and you say, no, produce it only in America or produce it only in Europe, the cost of goods to produce in those countries are very expensive. Their labor costs, for example, a US employee minimum wage, $5 an hour. $5 an hour is $100. South Africa, what is our minimum wage? 23 Rand an hour.
5 times as much.
5 times our amount. In China, it's less than that. And Chinese workers will work probably between 12 and 15 hours a day for a lot less. And their factories are working 20, 24 hours a day. So they have their shifts, 12-hour shifts, but they're working throughout. So they've benefited. The other thing is, America is talking a lot about blaming China and blaming other countries like South Africa and whoever for having taken away jobs from America. What we need to realize is, though, and I think there was a Chinese journalist or the like that put out a note the other day that talked about, so when China is exporting that particular item, let's use, for example, just a T-shirt again. The T-shirt cost $1 in the Chinese factory to manufacture. They're selling it onto the, say, Nike or whoever it is. They're selling it onto them for $2. $2, so they're making their profit. What is Nike selling it to the consumer in their markets in the US? That same T-shirt's going for $15 or $20. So there's massive. Where is that profit sitting? It's sitting in America, or it's sitting in many of the Western countries. So it's not like America has not benefited from the companies and corporates in America have benefited substantially from the low cost of production in many of the Asian countries. One of the reasons also Trump had to do that, he was and he actually put one of the exemptions besides the 90-day pause. he slipped in all of a sudden on Monday or Tuesday. He said also smartphones will be excluded now from this tariff against China. Apple and the likes of Dell and HP put huge pressure on Trump to try and exclude that. Because remember, majority of smartphones, laptops, computers are assembled and manufactured in Asian countries such as China, Vietnam, India, Indonesia. And if they had to bring it back into those, firstly, remember, if you're paying for an iPhone, you're paying, say, $1,000. Now, if you're introducing 100% tariff, what Trump was talking about, that same iPhone is going to cost you $2,000 for the consumer. Who's going to buy $2,000? Very few people. So it has a massive impact on American companies, American profits, and the tax revenues that the American government would have been receiving. It has a massive impact. So I think slowly as reality set in, more rational thoughts started to come in and they had to change track, and you've seen the benefit of that. Yunus, coming back to the issue around what's happening locally and what Asad and Rose and Isha has been talking about. First, I think I just want to touch one point before I touch on the debt. I just want to touch on one point on what Asad was talking about, politicians and the like. I agree and I disagree as well. So on the one hand, I think it's very, very important that we have ratepayer associations. They have had a fantastic and massive impact in our communities particularly since COVID, over the last 4 years. They've had a phenomenal impact, whether it's the Reservoirs ratepayers, Westfield ratepayers, Overport ratepayers, Musgrave ratepayers. In most of those communities that you've seen a net positive impact because there's active involvement. And Asad or Ish and all the Rose and whoever it is that's involved in these organizations, they must continue to push the community members to fund this. So, for example, in Musgrave, you pay $350 a year. 350 Rand a year. It's a minute amount relative to what you're paying rates and taxes every month. That $350 a month that's been paid to the Musgrave ratepayers has had such a fantastic impact in Musgrave and Morningside over the past year for such a small amount. They employ a few people, but they're having a meaningful impact on the community. There's a lot more that can be done, but with such a small budget, you've already seen something. But it's also important with the laws of the country that we're operating and the system that we're operating. We operate in an electoral system. We operate in a system where political parties and also now more recently independents can operate. And the next year local elections is exceptionally important. Whether we may not want to participate with the dominant parties, be it the ANC or the IFP or the DA or MK, whoever it is, but there's an opportunity also for independence. So we need to make it a point. Yes, ratepayers associations, and we have to be to put pressure and continue. But you need to also have our people that we can groom and that we can sort of train and bring them up. And you have to, unfortunately, yes, you can say the system is rotten, and yes, to a large extent it is rotten. But you still have to operate within that system. You have to, unless you can change the system. But changing the system doesn't happen overnight. It will take time to change the system. But you need to, if we have the opportunity to groom independents or groom people within certain parties to compete in the local elections next year, we must do that. And we can bring them from our circle and our communities where people that we can trust, and we can. So it's an opportunity. Longer term, I think we need to think over 5, 10, 15 years, have plans where many of our younger generation, when they're going to universities and the like, they're studying maybe necessarily just focusing on whether it's accounting or medicine or law or whatever it is. Yes, law, and they must do it. But we must also groom them to participate longer term, to be involved in politics. Politics is not going away. It's a part of every majority of the countries throughout the world. And if we can groom the right people, make sure they're educated and the like, and we can get. South Africa has seen changes over the last 30 years. Who would have thought that the ANC would have lost a majority within this period here? And they lost badly in certain areas. It can happen. And if you groom the right people and you groom people over time, we need to participate. Remember also how many people voted in the elections. And if we continue to educate through the use of the radio, through the use of community organization, ratepayers, that we must vote. If you got the opportunity to vote, use your vote. Small, certain wards and the like, there's such small differences that has such an impact. And if people vote, they must. And I think over the next 12 months, obviously leading up to the local elections, we need to continue to push that. Coming back to the points around the debt, I'll touch on that briefly, Yunus, just quickly.
Yes, correct.
On the debt side, from a national perspective, firstly, we are in dire straits. And hence the whole issue and the bargaining that's going on now around the VAT and those issues. And there's a possibility, we don't know still whether this VAT is going to be passed or not, because there's heavy negotiations still going on, and none of the political parties seem to be still for it besides the ANC. So we'll still see whether that's on the table. But the reality is that we still need a major deficit. Our revenues are much less than what our expenditure. And government, unfortunately, does not still want to cut on the expenditure. And the biggest line item, or one of the biggest line items, is the wage bill. The wage bill is a massive amount. And what you've talked about earlier, are we getting value for money? No, we're not getting value for money. And that's not necessarily just the municipalities. We're talking provincial, national, it's across the board. We're not getting that. But the fact of the matter is that budget is bloated. They've agreed to the unions to implement a 5.5% inflation wage increase, which is now set for the next 3 years. So they need to fund that. And the Minister of Finance was quite open about it, that this effectively the VAT increase was largely going towards funding the wage increases for the public sector, which is really, how can you do that? We've got bigger issues of infrastructure and those issues. That's where that increase should have went towards that, but to appease obviously alliance partners and make sure there's stability within that is happening. And that's the unfortunate thing. That's where we are. So we need to that wage bill and the expenditure has to stabilize and sort of come off over the next couple of years. Revenue can grow if we get things right. But to get things right, you need to have stable infrastructure so that private sector and the public sector can operate efficiently and grow the economy. That's what you need. You need that. But now when you're driving around, you've got potholes or you've got no water for 2, 3, 4 days. I mean, I read an article today in the Daily Maverick that talk about residents in, whether it's, I think it was Verulam or one of those places that had, not for a few weeks at a time, they don't have water. How can you operate like that? It's unacceptable. Then when you have electricity outages that take place for a few days, small businesses in particular are impacted because many of the corporates are going off the grid. They're having solar, they're having those, but the small businesses are being impacted and they're impacting a large workforce. That we've got the opportunity to grow. We've got the opportunity with our, was it last week or the week before I was in Cape Town for 1 or 2 days. Cape Town was packed. The hotels were packed. The restaurants were packed. Yes, there was that Two Oceans was taking place, but it was a school holidays, but it was packed. Relative to Durban during the same period of school holidays, Durban was not packed. But Durban has the best weather in the country. We've got a fantastic coastline. We've got the Drakensberg. We've got Midlands Meander. We've got so many beautiful scenic places, but we're not even attracting half of what Cape Town's attracting. It's because you have a functioning city versus a non-functioning city. And if we just get certain things right in this city, the impact on tourism will be phenomenal. And we need to get that. eThekwini has got a 35 billion rands debt, which has grown over the last 10 years because of maladministration and poor management. Now they've got a 71 billion rand budget. How much of that is going towards debt servicing costs because of that 35 billion rand debt?
And yet it was a debt-free city about 20 years ago.
Yet it was one of the best rated cities in Africa, and also from an international perspective.
This is what the ratepayers are saying, that progressively it's gone downhill, it's gone south.
When you're employing people that don't have the right skills in the city is going to lead to inefficiency, maladministration. Now you've got an entrenchment of firstly incompetence, and at the same time you've got entrenchment of lawlessness. When you have water mafias and construction mafias, and so that are obviously benefiting many politicians out there. Unfortunately, it takes a long time to. And the police commissioner, who's been trying, KZN police commissioner, he's actually made some impact. Then you get what? Some the sidelines, certain other people were bringing in cases against him to try and get him out because he's making inroads into trying to, wipe out some of that. So it's a tough fight, and they must continue fighting that. But it's going to be a tough road ahead. And I think, but we must continue. I mean, I implore what the ratepayers and all the other organizations that are trying, and you must continue to do what they're doing. But it's going to be a tough road. But nothing comes easy, and I think we must just continue to do what we can.
No, thanks, Hassan, for giving us quite a lot of valuable information, responding, creating some positivity, in a bleak setup. I want to bring in Asad before I bring in, Ish, because we're running out of time. Asad, the demographics of the country, and I know you guys are not politicians. I'll do this political debate in another session with some politicians, and we'll keep them busy, and we'll take them on. But I want to indicate to you that Hassan made a comment about the Western Cape and maybe some municipalities controlled by the Democratic Alliance. And I know, they've been attacked quite considerably for some of the racist, behavior. And from an Islamic perspective, there are other issues of concern. But having said that, I think it's only fair that if you're paying for services, then you must get those services. Now, the demographics do not support changing the government, because if in KZN we've got 92% blacks, they're going to support the parties that give them services, whether it's in Amlazi, Kwamashu, or wherever, and that's natural. You're going to have a situation where many provinces are going to be run by the political parties that are currently running them. The only difference being is the ANC got badly split because of MK, and MK is very strong in KZN, Gauteng, but the other provinces, they may not be strong. So nationally, when it comes to the national elections, the ANC may drop from 43% to 39%, but still with a coalition, they'll manage nationally. But when it comes to local government, you mentioned that yesterday or today there was a by-election. There are rumors that a lot of ANC councillors might skip. So you might have a Tikweni being run by another political party going forward, and that may be worse than what it is. So from the perspective of a ratepayer association that you belong to, and you predominantly have Indian colored whites in that ratepayer association, and I'm sure you got many blacks as well, but not the majority, because the majority are hostel dwellers, informal settlements, and they vote for either the MK or the ANC. Now, how do you see the situation panning out in the next election? Do you believe we're going to be facing some reality and you may have, a worse administration than what it is now?
Look, Brother Yunus, the reality is if most of these ANC wards move over to MKP, then most definitely eThekwini will be controlled by MKP. But with that being said, I mean, if you look at what happened in the last elections, the MK party won KZN by majority. That's the truth. Provincially, they won. They're the largest party in KZN. But because of a coalition, they excluded, and the IFP is now running the province. So similarly, something like that could happen in eThekwini. Whether it would be the ANC-led municipality or it could be an IFP-led municipality is left to be seen. But the reality is MKP will take eThekwini, and the rumors on the ground is that's what's going to happen. Coming back to what Brother Hassan was saying, I mean, I think he would make a good finance minister. I mean, he knows far more than Enoch Godong. At least
far more than our CFO too,
and far more than the CFO of eThekwini, because you need people. You can't take a taxi driver and make him a plumber. It can't work. So We're talking about bloated budgets and servicing a wage bill, and that's the truth. But I mean, we have to face reality, and we need to do what other countries have done. Austerity measures have to be put in place. We have to cut the budget, and we got to cut it to the bone. So, this thing at one stage, it was an ANC policy to increase employment. And when they were doing this, we told them, we won the ANC at that stage. How are you going to fund this? You're simply bringing in people. I mean, go now to a eThekwini municipality, ask Ish, ask Rose, ask anyone who's a Ratepayers Association to dig a trench. You got 20 people. 20 people are paid. 1 O is digging, 19 O's are watching the O dig. And we're paying for this.
Whereas 2 guys can do the job.
When 2 O's can do the job. Or you could bring, for the price that you're paying for the 20 people, you can buy a mini excavator. You'll get the job done in less the time at half the cost. And it goes back to what Brother Hussain was talking about in terms of efficiency of employment, because that's what the Chinese do.
So this is to create a voter base. That's what it's all about.
But it, at what cost? At
Correct.
What cost? You can't fund this. It's impossible, because even if you speak to some officials in the municipality and you tell them, hey, the ratepayers have a potential to bring this municipality to its feet, they tell you no. Because we self-funded. They think that the money falls from the sky. They don't realize it's the ratepayers who fund the municipality. And I'll give you another example.
And those employees are heavily shielded by the unions.
So I'll give you another example. Westville, there's a budget increase coming up, right? They're doing the same thing that they did last year. They haven't got a venue for public participation meeting in Westville. If where they're having it is in Claremont.
Correct.
So they're going to Claremont to consult on a tariff hike for individuals who don't pay for it. They don't pay for tariffs, but you're going to go and consult with them. The people of Westville pay for the tariff hike, but you're not coming to us. Because if you come to us, we'll tell you take a hike. But you're going to go to Claremont and then you're going to go back and say, we had public participation. If you as a Westville resident...
Pre-apartheid, it was the other way around.
Correct.
They wouldn't allow any tariff hikes.
Correct. And what they're also saying is, well, if you wanted to say something about the tariff hike, why didn't you come to Claremont? Because that's what they're telling us. Now, they're not consulting with the key stakeholders, people who need to be at those meetings and explain. But you're going to people who don't even have an idea of how to run a budget. And this is the problem that we have.
Okay, I think Hassan has mentioned clearly that, we got a serious problem going forward. Isha, I want to bring you in. I know in Reservoir Hills, you've been overseeing some kind of maintenance issues that are taking place, particularly on the electricity side, water side, having some construction and security background. What's your proposal going forward? We're running out of time. We're almost done.
Okay, I think the best way to go forward is the ratepayers associations need to handle the things on the ground. If they are there, you will see less money being spent and more work being done. And as Asad has said, that you see one guy digging and 20 guys standing, which is truth. I've got pictures of it as well. They don't care. When you ask them something, guys, how long will this be finished? We don't know. So what they do is they pull the time for the next shift. And then when the next shift comes in, they'll sit on a chair and say, we're going for spares. The workers will sit, they're gone for spares. They're gone for 6-7 hours spares, then another shift comes in. In certain instances, you'll see maybe 6 or 8 plumbers doing one job. And there is no supervision that the municipality sends out to pass the job. So we had an issue where they were sorting out a water leak, they hit a cable. So when they hit the cable, everybody stood. We can't do anything now. We got to call the electrical guys in. That took another day for them to come in. So and the biggest problem is they do not put the water pipe and the electrical pipe with a certain distance. They actually have it so close. They say, they have it 500 meters away, which is bullshit. I'm sorry, it's rubbish, right? But they have it so close that if the guy is digging, he's going to hit the cable. And you must remember something. They're doing band-aid jobs now. They just do a band-aid on that, and then it blows, and we're out for electricity.
So
for
when they
days.
fix a problem, a couple hours later, you're back to square one again.
It's same thing with the plumbing. They do band-aid jobs. As soon as they fix this, it pops a meter away. Then it pops 10 meters away. So that's what they call band-aid jobs. That's what's happening.
So what is coming through clearly is the fact that, work is being given to be contractors and nobody's against it, but the standard of workmanship needs much to be appreciated. It's substandard. Employees internally are highly problematic. There's have to be, a turnaround strategy looking at the key problems facing government and the municipalities, and the current politicians need to really address these things seriously to improve service delivery. And this is what we're talking about. Ratepay associations are making noises, they're raising issues, they're pointing out that, set aside politics and look at value for money for those that are paying rates and taxes, and we've got serious problems. One listener phoned me earlier on and he said that in Sparks Road, when it rains, the whole road is flooded and you can't even walk across, and it takes time for people to come and clear the blocked drains. And you drive throughout the city, you see there's overflow of water and there's drains being blocked because there's dirt going in, and the people are dumping dirt all over the place. And then unfortunately, the informal settlements, they do not have proper drainage facilities, and their waste is coming into the roads in wherever areas, in Alpine Road, in Reservoir Hills, because there's a large number of informal settlements, and nothing is being done to improve their lives. So we have a serious problem in the Tikweni and in the Msunduzi and other municipalities in KZN. We're hoping that the leadership that had these meetings and engaged, they would do something drastic. Number one, to look at the staff resources in these various government departments, and then look at bringing in experienced personnel, even if it means parking these guys one side. Then also looking at outsourcing, maintenance and other work to the local ratepay associations who will be able to provide value for money. Because I recall when I was in the municipality many years ago, there was stress on local economic empowerment, so that communities in the area, you use local contractors and you get the communities to provide the oversight role. And this is what the ratepay associations are demanding, that allow the ratepayers to deal with the problems that are emanating and allocate funds accordingly. And I'm sure the Municipal Systems Act and Structures Act does allow for that opportunity for local labor to be utilized, rather than bring in contractors that are not going to deliver, and they're going to be corrupt, and there's going to be mafias, etc., as Hassan mentioned. And this is going to deteriorate the municipalities, big time. Listeners, this has now brought us to the end of News in Focus. We can continue to 11 o'clock, but I think our colleagues here, our ratepay associations, have been busy all day in meetings, and I must thank them for joining me in this late hour. But it shows that their concern for the communities out there, and the fact that, as both Ish, Rose and Asad mentioned, a lot of this is being done on your own time, at your own cost. Communities are paying towards it. The municipalities is not funding all this. But the struggle must continue. And very important is, although, the minority communities are the communities that are making a meaningful contribution towards the rates and tax base, they must not sit back and do nothing about it. Businesses, etc., must be concerned, because we are all residents of this country and we care for this country, as Hassan is saying. We want to see this country improving. There's a lot of good that South Africa has done, and, worldwide. And we should continue to preserve this country and make it like how the Western Cape is functioning effectively with a few other provinces, that KZN must improve. So going forward, I think we're going to try our level best, put in the efforts. I know that both Ish, Asad and Rose are continuing the struggle and will continue the struggle. And sometime down the line, the municipalities will listen, and we can hope to make the change. But we have to ensure that we participate in local issues and keep local government and government on their toes by holding them accountable. On that note, that brings us to the end of News in Focus for this evening. My final comment is that we have Almighty Allah that controls the world, and we should turn to our Creator to seek assistance, because certainly with the assistance of our Creator and our prayers and our salah, etc., we will be able to make some changes. Let's be optimistic. Let's have hope. And we will continue with these discussions going forward in future programs. I mentioned to our participants this evening that I'd like to bring some politicians in to talk about the political scenario, particularly with MK versus the ANC and the DA's role in providing an oversight. But also, we need to talk further on the functions of the GNU. We're glad that it didn't collapse with this difference in, voting for the budget. And we're hoping that, political parties will work together for the interest of this particular country and municipality. Until next week's Wednesday, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and shukran to all our participants that participated in this discussion this evening, particularly our guests, Hassan, Asad, Rose, and Ish.